Welcome back, honeys. It's a brand new Beesness. You may be able to tell from my voice that I've got some sort of minor cold or something going on today, so if I sound at all funky or tired throughout the episode, please bear with me. I'm doing my best to try and get better soon. The last week was jam-packed with stories, so let's go ahead and get started. Starting off with our quick follow-ups as we usually do, that unfinished graffitied skyscraper complex found a lifeline last week as an LA developer began official talks to buy the ocean-wide plaza. More to come on that as more information is released. Thursday of last week, a Detroit judge dismissed the case against the alleged Beavis graffiti artist. On Thursday, 6 felony counts of malicious destruction of property against Brian Herron, accused by Wayne County prosecutors of spraying said faces throughout Detroit, was dismissed. The charge had been punishable by up to 4 years in prison. The judge behind this decision, Ronald Giles of the 36th District Court, cited insufficient evidence at the preliminary examination, so the case could not proceed. Last week also saw a range of responses across the art world as Tasmania's Mona admitted that the Picassos in the contentious ladies-only salon were in fact fakes. After both the Australian branch of The Guardian and the Picasso administration, the entity that manages the late artist's estate, raised questions about the authenticity of these items, the ones on show in recent weeks, the artist behind the exhibition, Kachele, subsequently confessed she had made them herself. The participatory installation, exclusively accessible to any and all ladies, has yet again shocked us. Quite a feat. The new British Museum director also faced some criticism in Art News last week after he promoted hope for partnership with Greece on a new Parthenon marbles agreement and then took it right back. Nicholas Kulinin, the new director of the museum, spoke this week of the possibility of a new official agreement. This was taken as a sign that the institution is moving towards resolving the long-standing dispute over these sculptures. However, Cullinan immediately ruled out a full-scale return of the marbles. He specifically told the BBC that the 1963 Act of Parliament, aka the British Museum Act of 1963, forbids the museum from permanently giving them back. However, that's not maybe as targeted as it seems because the Act as a whole formally prevents the British Museum from getting rid of any artworks in its collection. We received word last week as well that globally renowned ancient rock art in the Negev desert faces imminent destruction. A bit of background on that rock art: it was created by roaming societies of desert people over thousands of years, since at least the 3rd millennium BCE. It's often figurative of local animals, but some also feature abstract forms. Importantly, this art is created by making cuts into what's called desert varnish, a natural thin black coating that forms on limestone rock. However, a study last week published in Frontiers in Fungal Biology revealed that the petroglyphs are home to a community of uncommon specialist fungi and lichens that erode ancient artworks through chemical and mechanical means. The fungi and lichens are able to secrete different types of acids that dissolve the limestone itself. They can also penetrate and grow within the stone grains, causing mechanical damage, according to Laura Rabichin, a PhD student at the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna in Austria, and a participant in the study. For an example, she points to the deterioration of stone cultural heritage in the Mediterranean. Unfortunately, because natural weathering processes can't really be stopped, there's nothing to be done but monitor and document the rock art while it lasts. The speed of their deterioration, however, depends entirely on how the climate changes in the next few years. Lots of hype was raised last week when a hidden self-portrait by English artist Norman Cornish was found at the Bowes Museum in County Durham. Cornish is arguably the most famous artist to come out of the northeast of England in the 20th century. The discovery was made a month ago during work on Cornish's painting Bar Scene from the collection of the Durham City Council, when conservator John Old found within the painting's backings and inner pieces another artwork. The headline was dropped last week, as that's when the hidden painting actually went on display. Vicky Sturz, the Bose's director of programs and collections, is quoted in The Guardian as saying that it's so exciting to find this, and it shows why conservation is so important, that it allows for further discovery. And honeys, I couldn't agree more. Our next headline's particularly exciting in the accessibility sense. The Perez Art Museum of Miami launched a new free streaming platform for Latin American, Caribbean, and African diasporan artworks. Hyperallergic in particular celebrated this opening, saying that it, quote, fills gaps in moving image scholarship from the global majority, end quote. The streaming platform will present 35 video works in 5 exhibitions throughout the summer of 2024, examining the evolution of media art from these designated regions. The themes of these exhibitions will range everything from bodies across space to culture, climate, and time, and even Caribbean identity. We do have one obituary this week, that of Alex Janvier, an indigenous painter of evocative abstractions who passed at age 89 on July 10th. Javier will be remembered, according to our sources, for his, quote, vividly colorful paintings melding indigenous Denisoulin artistry with modern and contemporary styles, end quote. A couple of our sales, auctions, events type stories this week. The first, the announcement that a historic drawing once owned by George Washington is headed to auction. The work in question depicts the Bastille and is by Etienne Louis Denis Cathala, an architect who oversaw the prison's demolition. Likely as such, it is a scene showing said demolition. It was gifted to Washington by the Marquis de Lafayette, the Major General of the Continental Army, likely to commemorate Washington receiving the key to the French city of Bastille in 1790. The inkwash drawing is expected to fetch as much as $800,000 in September when it goes to auction hosted by Freeman's Hidman, but it will first go on a tour beginning in Paris before showing in New York, Chicago, and finally at the Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia. You can catch it in the last location throughout the month of August. We were happy to hear that last week a Dior Haute Couture show featured works by the recently passed artist Faith Ringgold. The show in question was the Autumn through Winter 24 through 25 show occurring on June 25th in Paris. Ringgold passed in April at 93 years old. The show was organized by Dior's Maria Grazia Chiuri at the Musée Rodin, the previous spot of women artist highlights she has done in the Dior's collections. These artists include Judy Chicago and Isabella Ducrot. Here, Ringgold was included through incorporated text, portraiture, elements of African-American story quilts that she was famous for. We love to see representation of the connections between fine arts and fashion. A bit of a necessary left turn here. Last week, Graceland officially began to question the authenticity of certain Elvis memorabilia sold by an auction house with ties to Priscilla Presley. What makes this story even crazier is that only days before this headline dropped, another did that Priscilla Presley was alleging that the owner of this auction house was financially abusing her. Now, this auction house in question is GWS Auctions out of California. They are largely famous for selling Elvis memorabilia, especially since a 2007 sale of a red jet supposedly belonging to the singer. The owner of GWS Auctions, Brigitte Cruz, was a friend of Priscilla Presley and has even acted as her power of attorney at times before the 2023 downfall of their relationship into lawsuits over missed or blocked business opportunities. Circling back to the authenticity issue, concerns were raised later that same week by Joel Weinschenker, who oversees the largest collection of Elvis memorabilia and who found out items being sold by GWS Auctions were almost definite fakes after coming across a piece he knew was in the Graceland collection online. That specific piece is a black grommet jacket that was a one-of-a-kind worn by Elvis in 1972, still in Graceland to this day. GWS listed it in a 2023 auction. As managing partner of Elvis Presley Enterprises, Weinschenker is very familiar with the private collections of Graceland. Weinshanker claims he has long feared fakes are being auctioned by the house. These fears increased in 2022 when Graceland's staff raised concerns about certain items that did not have receipts showing the initial purchases by Elvis Presley. Graceland staff argued they would, in fact, have these receipts because Elvis famously always used credit and his accountant father kept meticulous records. Notably, some of these items were offered with a letter from Priscilla Presley vouching for their authenticity, even though some of them would have been bought or possessed after their 1972 divorce. In their report on the situation, NBC quotes experts who say that the biggest issue with Elvis fakes is that some with genuine ties to the star provide bogus items, making it difficult to know what's genuine. After Weinshanker and Graceland took to the press, Priscilla's lawyers refused to make comments. Weinshanker did say that he spoke to Krause about these concerns, sharing text messages with NBC News that apparently support this claim. However, in an interview with NBC, Krause downplayed her falling out with Priscilla. Ultimately, honeys, if you feel inclined to buy any Elvis merch going forward, be extremely careful. Last week saw a lot of headlines about museums, churches, and more, so let's switch gears. An Istanbul church reopened as a mosque with medieval mosaics and frescoes intact, to the relief of many. The 11th century Kora Church faced renovation orders from the Turkish government in 2020 to become a mosque. Many at this point feared for the safety and preservation of, according to Hyperallergic, quote, some of the world's finest late Byzantine-era mosaics and frescoes, end quote. The building has since reopened as Kyrie Mosque with its treasured works of Christian art open for public view with very few exceptions. Although this story is a bit longer, I decided we needed to put it in this episode because, first, it shows a growing recognition for the often downplayed Byzantine influence throughout the region. Visible traces of the once dominant Byzantine presence throughout the city of Istanbul have largely been lost to time and urban development or even repurposing over the centuries. So this successful conservation and the attention it's drawing to the church/mosque is a win. On a bigger scale, however, it reflects a larger trend towards theopolitical influence in conservation. The reopening of both the Kora and the world-famous Hagia Sophia to Islamic prayers after decades as museums was driven by the current Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who considers these renovations to be victories for Muslims worldwide and keeps using references to the Byzantine Empire to disparage political opponents. Although there is some celebration to be had, ultimately this story demonstrates contemporary concerns about why we are going through certain restoration projects. Is it for tourist appeal? Is it for cultural identity or history reclamation? Or something else? A few last stories that definitely earned their place. First, Iowa's Stanley Museum of Art becomes the first in the U.S. to return any Benin bronzes. The Benin bronzes, if you're not familiar, are a group of thousands of objects that were raided from a royal palace in the Kingdom of Benin, what is now Nigeria, in 1897. In recent years, the bronzes have become something of a test for a museum's dedication to their restitution efforts if they hold them in their collections. The push to return the bronzes has been widespread, but not necessarily successful. For example, in 2022, the German government approved the restitution of 22 bronzes to Nigeria, but the return was stalled amid fears of these objects being hidden within private collections of the royal family. University of Iowa's Stanley Museum of Art has broken with such behavioral norms by becoming the first in the U.S. to restitute its holdings of Benin bronzes to the Oba, or King, of Benin. Oba Iware II is, according to the Nigerian government as of 2023, the rightful custodian of the artifacts. Though that declaration came with some controversy for the government, the two objects from the Stanley's holdings were returned to the Oba on July 15th at the Benin Palace in Nigeria. Our final headline from the last week: charges brought forth by the British Museum revealed that last month a Brazilian artist stole a historic coin from them as part of an art project before giving it back. The BM, of course, was less than thrilled with this experiment. Elie Sartuzzi stole the silver coin minted in 1645 England from its display case during a demonstration overseen by a volunteer guide on June 18th of this year. He replaced it with a replica before carrying the original downstairs and depositing it into the designated change donation box. The artist filmed both the theft and return and is now including that footage as a 7-minute video titled Sleight of Hand in his MFA thesis exhibition at Goldsmiths, University of London, up through July 16th. Though the museum, of course, hopes to take legal action, according to both the artist and his lawyer, the performance does not violate museum policies against touching objects or their removal from the premises. They also don't fall under the Theft Act of 1968. Our sources for today did not confirm one way or the other whether the artist and his lawyer are correct, so we will have updates to come for sure. All right, honeys, I know that was a long one. Thank you for sticking it out with me. Hope you heard some interesting things. And remember that you can always hear more headlines from the last week if you purchase our Honey Drop episodes available at the end of each month for just a few dollars. Your investment is very appreciated. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Expect our brand new episode, The Godfather of Color Theory, on Thursday. And try not to roast in this 115-degree heat. This podcast and this episode were created, produced, hosted, and researched, as well as fact-checked by yours truly, Celia Bugno. It was edited by our brand new sound engineer and producer of our intro music, Chris Meinhold. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite streaming platforms, as well as your social medias.